Hello, RoahmMythril here once again, getting back to MagMammal 3, and I have freshly taken a break, played some other games to restore my sanity a bit. For those wondering, the main games I've been playing in my off time lately just for my own enjoyment are Warriors Abyss, where they just updated and added a new difficulty level that I have not been able to beat yet. It's a bit of a thing. And also Blueprints, a puzzle exploration game where you're kind of building a house as you explore it. It's a roguelite where you don't really control what rooms you have access to, but it's very intriguing, and I have been enjoying that, so thank you, Zwat, for sending me that one. But anyway, it's time for the judge commentary for the stage we just played. 132nd place, ArcaneMan CHAOS TOWER, CERN HQ Remains, by Void Visitor. This stage got a 43 even, with a 4.6 in difficulty, 12.6 in design, 7.2 in fun, 10.2 in creativity, 6.8 in aesthetics, and 6.2 in functionality. Mick. What? What was that about? This level is so completely weird that it defied explanation on my first playthrough, taking at least 2 or 3 runs before I could begin forming my opinion. While that's great for memorability, it's largely to the level's detriment. No Mega Man level should be this bewildering on a first run. Fortunately, beneath the omnipresent and chaotic aesthetic is a surprisingly playable level. There's an assortment of enemies, including some from Mega Man 11, but only the shadowy clone holograms and Black Hole Joes really stick out significantly. The rest are basically just obstacles. The holograms? Memorable in a good way. They make a fine obstacle during the starfields. The Black Hole Joes? Their suction is much too strong, and they have too many gotcha moments with force beams. As for the gimmicks, they have solid concepts, but their execution is usually either excessive or confusing. The force beams are on the excessive end. The giant beam room is very repetitive for its sheer size, and the gotchas can be irritating. The starfield, meanwhile, is on the confusing end. Putting it bluntly, slightly fading the player is a horrible way to telegraph that the triangle and square solids have flipped which is and isn't solid, and that terrible tell ruins an otherwise effective room. I didn't even notice that. So that's how subtle that tell is. Thankfully, the galaxy portals are plain great from start to finish, so the stage design ends on a high note. The boss fights are no less mixed. The Wily Cat is a welcome break after the starfield, not to mention hilariously silly. The HUD run's got an excellent concept, but its arena is painfully cramped, and how to dodge the screen clearer isn't exactly, well, clear. Use the portals. Wait, that works? I didn't even think of that. But the real weak point is ArcaneMan himself. His first phase could work, but his tells are too fast, and his grab's ability to insta-kill you is poorly conveyed. His second phase is a struggle to control thanks to everything pulling you everywhere, making a rather chaotic jumble. And his final phase can get spammy with the shot-blocking black holes, even if it's really the easiest of the 3. All in all, it leaves a bitter taste going into the lore dump. But to end things on a high note, the token sections are quite good. 3 is one of the highlights, offering one of the only threatening Wall Blaster 2s I've ever met, and the only real complaints I have is that 1 can be a little glitchy, and 4 a smidge obtuse. But my highlight of this level has to be AetherMan, as he's a far better boss than his minion. Yes, he hits hard and has several health bars, but you have respawning tanks, lots of dodge room, and his telegraphs for the most part can be recognized from anywhere. He's still a bit rough around the edges, particularly the arrow portal and his half-health phases, but ultimately, I had fun with his fight. I just wish the dialogue wasn't so lengthy. Y'all are super lucky you have a cutscene skip, cause we didn't get that in judging. Oh gods! So you had to go through the cutscene dialogue anytime you had to restart the fight? Yeah, that's a thing. Overall, I had more fun with this than I expected to. I can't say it's a very good level, too many spots that are rough around the edges, but it's an experience I'll not soon forget. I'd even say I look on it fondly. Shinryu. This is a very awkward level to talk about, not because of its design and functionality issues, although those certainly don't help. Rather, it's because this is a level with tons of potential. There's some interesting concepts here that obviously had a lot of effort and creativity put into them, but are ultimately brought down hard by bad execution. Barring the rather odd visuals, things aren't too bad when you initially drop into the level. A few things like the movable blocks, laser generators, and the yellow star Joes are introduced fairly well. Granted, the blocks are a little glitchy if they get too close to a screen transition. I had one situation where a block consistently zipped along the ground whenever I re-entered a screen. But other than that, everything was okay for those first few screens. Where things start to take a turn for the worse is when you reach the colored block rooms. These are some of the most visually disorienting segments in any Mega Man stage I've played. The only hint you get as to whether or not the square and triangle blocks are tangible is a slight fading effect on Mega Man sprites after entering a portal. The background being filled with constantly moving stars only adds to the visual overload. While I did eventually figure out how it works, it doesn't change the fact that this section has some incredibly bad conveyance, which makes it doubly frustrating for anyone going in blind. The rest of the segments following these rooms were thankfully a lot more tolerable by comparison, but still had their fair share of issues. First, there's the Galaxy Portal segments. The Yoku variants of these are an interesting idea, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't have at least a bit of fun with the parts involving them. I can't say the same for the moving and rotating ones, however. Dealing with them felt more tedious than anything, mostly due to the strict timing and spacing involved, and ultimately getting set back a couple of steps multiple times in a row because of it. That aside, the only other part of the level that stuck out to me was a screen with a force beam in the center and a black hole Joe on the other side. You can very easily die the moment you enter this room because the Joe will immediately start pulling you towards the force beam, which to me indicates either a lack of care or playtesting. As minor of a section as this may be, it's still a pretty glaring issue. And then we have the bosses. The Tama mini-boss certainly caught me off guard at first. I definitely wasn't expecting a Serious Sam reference, but I can still appreciate it. I'm not familiar with Serious Sam, so I'm not really sure what the reference was there, but it was definitely something. That said, it still ended up being a pretty straightforward fight, and probably the most enjoyable of the bosses this level has to offer. As for the second mini-boss, while its first phase is tolerable, the second phase left a bad impression right away when it suddenly dragged me into the center pit for an instant death. Yeah. It also has a full screen attack that's incredibly finicky to avoid, essentially forcing you to jump into the portals at the last possible moment before the attack goes off. After that, there's ArcaneMan. Besides obscuring the screen in his second phase and being generally chaotic to fight, his battle goes from annoying to infuriating due to one thing: his grab move. Getting hit by this locks all your weapons and it disables your ability to charge/slide. This is straight up awful to force on someone during a boss fight. It would be one thing if you could knock him out of doing this, like Magna Centipede from X2 for example, but to my knowledge there's no way to mitigate this other than to either get hit by the grab again or just avoid it outright. All of this is made even worse due to a bug that keeps your abilities locked if you die from this attack, which is likely given how much damage it does. By comparison, the optional boss is much more tolerable, strangely enough. He did glitch out on me at one point when one of his ArcaneMan clones fell through the floor, and his fight is still a bit of a mess, mostly due to visual overload from way too many effects going off. But he was nowhere near as annoying to deal with than the main boss. I actually kinda had fun with him, to be honest. And to me, that's probably the most bittersweet note to end this level on. Because, like I said before, there's unique ideas in here that could make for a fun and interesting level if they were more refined. To the level maker, if you ever do go back and make a more fine-tuned version of this stage, then please let me know, because I'd really like to see how that would turn out. Entry 007, ArcaneMan Review. Summary, a detailed document compiled by analyzer in Magmammal Contestula, Dr. Fake Name O. Pachy. Am I largely responsible for people calling it Magmammal at this point, or did anybody else call it that before I started saying it that way? It just amuses me to actually see it written out that way. The following document details the afterthoughts after Dr. Pachy's exposure to the submission titled ArcaneMan CHAOS TOWER CERN HQ Remains. Document start. Oh boy, this stage. First off, that's quite a mouthful of a stage name. Definitely grabs the attention. The tile sets are all over the place. It's a mixture of everything, and the theming doesn't seem to stay consistent. Backgrounds are also a huge mix and match, sometimes even deliberately made glitchy looking. That's why it's a Chaos Tower, I guess. Still, a messy presentation. There's just a lot to take in for every room in this stage, be it some strange visual effect, bizarre enemy designs, unintuitive puzzle segments. As if the sheer room size for these on its own is not absurd enough. More isn't always necessarily better. Some of these gimmicks are neat. I do like the Yoku Galaxy portals. Some, not so much, like the abundance of black hole gimmick that is present in so many places, as well as the phasing shape blocks, where some blocks are even intangible without much to tell graphics-wise that they behave differently. The mini-boss thing, the Simon Says looking thing, can be pretty mean. The black hole thing after you get rid of all 4 cores is just a rude thing for first-time fights. You can also occasionally get stun-locked on the teleporters if you happen to leave certain cores alive. There's also a strange bug with the special weapons sometimes being locked out after repeated attempts at ArcaneMan. ArcaneMan. Arcane freaking man. Let's see. Teleporting all around, being erratic as all heck, with fake-out telegraphs and reflecting your shots, disabling your weapons, and even tossing you around the room like a ragdoll. Oh, and let's not forget a desperation attack where he becomes completely invulnerable. All to create a wonderful disaster of a fight that takes absolutely zero account to the player's enjoyment. So, because that wasn't bad enough of a fight, let's have another. Now it's Ascended ArcaneMan or something. I don't know. Multiple health bars, because of course, with a terrible palette making it impossible to tell how much health is there exactly, always airborne, more black hole attacks that home in on onto you, yet more desperation attacks with absolutely awful visual clutter. He is somehow a little more manageable because his attacks are more pattern-based compared to normal ArcaneMan, but it's still not very fun of a fight. The story, it's just way too out there and does not fit the Mega Man universe at all, especially not the classic era at least. Something about souls, death, and other morbid subjects too? See what I mean, how it doesn't fit the generally carefree and colorful nature that the classic series is known for? Honestly, the level was definitely a mess. A memorable experience for sure, but it's not one that I would want to come back to. Document N. Entry decoder version AN0001 terminated. Flashman85. There's no shortage of written reviews, video playthroughs, and social media discussions about how to make a good level for this contest. The contest rules even link to some of this wisdom. Yet this level repeats all the worst mistakes of MagMemel 1 and 2, to the point where I would believe you if you told me this was a troll level poking fun at MagMemel 2's Yggdrasil. As seen especially in the hologram areas, the player is constantly bombarded with challenges that take too long to complete. Too many new ideas at once, too many threats, too many different tile sets, too much animation and or too much pressure to react instantly, with checkpoints and power-ups that are too far apart. The screen count is already triple what it should be. These issues make the level feel even longer. Everything about this level is too much. That also goes for the difficulty. The mini-boss is hard to dodge. The main boss is outrageously overpaced and unforgiving, and I never want to fight him again. The optional boss at least has the awesome visual effect of sucking up the background, and the power-up cache beforehand is a merciful consideration, but the fight is exhausting. I can commend the inclusion of official Capcom enemies not represented in the dev kit, and the creativity of using Magnet Beam, or, a point-blank charge shot, to pull crates. Wait, that works? Okay. I can celebrate the genuinely fun teleporter challenges and the programming skill necessary to create such complex and mostly glitch-free bosses. If I ignore how they clash with each other, I can appreciate the rampant ridiculous humor and the deep, albeit typo-ridden lore. There are moments where I can almost set aside my fatigue and frustration enough to start enjoying the experience, but they're merely moments and not enough to save the level from the pitfalls we urged everyone to avoid. And Ace-Spark. I bet you were expecting a meme here, perhaps. Maybe that one with Chris I'm too afraid to ask Pratt. Maybe some abomination of Dav looking like that weird chunkster priest saying, "Why though?" in the infamous painting by Fernando Botero. Oh no, I have things to say. And no, this is not going to be a long rant a la MagMemel 2's Yggdrasil. I know full well what first impressions of this stage are like. This is MagMemel 3's Yggdrasil, people may cry. Well, maybe in a way, yeah, this stage is a confusing ball of surreal insanity. It's weird, it's rather ugly. It's both fatuous? There's a word I'm not sure I know. And pretentious at the same time. And it arbitrarily throws not one but two super bosses with obnoxious special effects and things straight out of a Windows 98 screenshot. It feels it's an utter mess. And it is. Let's not sell that short. It's a total burning heap of a stage. But heap of what? Underneath that mess, that poor first impression beneath the cover, is a stage that honestly kind of works. There is a very consistent internal logic to what the stage does with its gimmicks. The moment what the stage is trying to do starts to click, so does the rest of the level. It doesn't throw curveballs of mechanics, it just builds upon what's been set, and it never really breaks its internal rules. Even the most obnoxious and potentially confusing of enemies in the stage are in fact fairly basic in their actions, just applying changes to Mega Man's movement. Things you can deal with when you're prepared. So, what is the deal here? What is this stage? Well, to be truthful, in terms of mechanics and stage design, I like this. I like this? Yes, actually, I like the challenges here. Some of the puzzles require your thinking head on. Others require you to pay attention to the weird surroundings because sometimes, just sometimes, there's something out of place. What the stage ultimately utterly fails at is conveyance. To say it doesn't teach its mechanics well is an understatement. The player's left flailing badly as they try and pick up what the bleeding heck this stage is trying to ask of them. Do you use special weapons to deal with force beams? You can shoot the generators? The ones that look like background objects? Just what the heck is the deal with those reskinned Galaxy Man teleporters and the shapes? Some changes in the aesthetics here and there, force beam generators at the player's height to teach that mechanic, the galaxies that change the solidity of the block shapes showing a much clearer indication of which ones are currently active. This lack of teaching applies to the two bosses, although I feel a lesser extent to the super boss. There's a unique instant death mechanic to ArcaneMan, where he drains your life force. The tell that something is happening here is far too subtle. Yeah, I'm afraid I really didn't get how that worked. I think that's the key thing. Your enjoyment here will come down to how frustrating the learning process is. Once the stage makes sense, it makes sense. There's nothing really all that frustrating about it, but it's just so many things bungled in teaching, that I think this stage will struggle for it. Of the two bosses, I didn't find Arcane himself much fun. It tries to pull off all these cool moves, but ends up feeling really clunky to fight. Through the constant shifting of the player, the instant kill moves, arbitrary blocking of the player's shots at unintuitive times, not a fan. That said, Aetherman clearly trying to be a mega hard super boss is the more enjoyable fight. I think this is the one time where teaching elements actually land. Here, have 4 energy tanks. This boss is supposed to hit hard, play hard, use everything against it. It's also got a generally more recognizable pattern and easier tells. Outside of the Aether barrier, being a bit hard to spot, it's a manic battle, and it's a bit out there for the usual Mega Man, but ultimately, I came away positive. For the record, at this point, I don't really dislike Yggdrasil that much anymore either, but ArcaneMan is the superior stage by quite a bit. Also mentioning the super boss reminds me I need to go restock on tanks real quick. There we go. So yeah, having some time away from the stage, I feel like most of what I said still stands. The stage itself, the exploration, getting the tokens, dealing with the gimmicks, I honestly ended up finding most of that pretty fun. The main issues I had were some of the visuals that just kind of flashbang you going from dark screens to super bright, the strobe effect of the neon, the shape blocks, especially in the darkness, that kind of messed with me a little. Other than that, I think my main complaints, honestly, were the bosses. There were just some issues there, which again, I hate to say, because it's obvious a lot of heart went into making these bosses, a lot of programming effort. They're very cool in that respect, but I admittedly did not really find myself having that much fun trying to figure ArcaneMan out. Like, once you get his attacks, you get them, which there are still some that I absolutely do not get. Like, I don't understand the life force drain thing, how exactly that works. How sometimes when he throws you it does no damage, other times he throws you it's an instant kill. And that too, I think, is another thing that works against ArcaneMan for me, is the fact that there are 2 different things that can happen during that fight that are an instant kill. The mouth thing, at least once you understand what that's doing, that one's easier to deal with. Aetherman, like most of the judges, I think I did enjoy the Aetherman fight a bit more, though I did have to resort to tanks during that one, but at least using tanks during that fight felt worthwhile because there wasn't so much instant death going on. There are certain attacks that he has that I still don't really know full well how to deal with, like that ending part where everything's kind of breaking down and he's just making explosions all over the place. I don't really feel like I had a lot of time to dodge those before they went off, and so many of the things he did just hit like a truck. Especially that part where the 2 ArcaneMan clones show up, the one that can start making his black holes teleport. I got hit with so many of those, and they decimate your health. So that part was a bit of a thing. But overall, this experience, it wasn't as bad as I was expecting from all the build-up. It was a bit of a thing. I'm not denying that. It was definitely a difficult stage, but I feel like most of the difficulty was just the bosses. The stage exploration itself, honestly, I really enjoyed. And the story, while it was a bit hard to follow due to the whole English not first language thing, I at least was able to follow it well enough. It does feel a bit out of place for classic Mega Man. It does feel more like something that I could see working better in one of the more serious sub-series. But you work with what you have. I don't think there's a Make a Good Mega Man X level contest, for example, so you work with what you have where you can work with it. And again, I know I've said this a number of times, but I do still very much find it impressive that you worked all this out, all these custom bosses, custom enemies, custom gimmicks, this big stage, all while staring down exams. Honestly, kudos to you, man. So I think that's where we're going to call it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying the series so far, and I shall see you again next time. Until then, fare thee well.